ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. You who believe, be mindful of Allah as is His due, and make sure you devote yourselves to Him to your dying moment. And He reminds us, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. People, be mindful of your Lord who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the pair of them spread countless men and women far and wide. Be mindful of Allah, in whose name you make requests of one another. Beware of severing the ties of kinship. Allah is always watching over you. And He reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Believers, be mindful of Allah, speak in a direct fashion and to good purpose, and He will put your deeds right for you and forgive you your sins. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will truly achieve a great triumph. Today is Friday, Yawm al-Jum'ah, a day of great blessings, and a day on which that country, whose name we don't mention, restarted its killing campaign on the people, on our brothers and sisters in Gaza. And we learn much from every decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and let us not be unmindful of the fact that what is happening in Gaza is part of Allah's decree. It is part of Allah's decree, and Allah's decree is not meant for us to resist, and Allah's decree is not meant for us to object to. Allah's decree is meant for us to simply embrace. And the way we respond to Allah's decree is through Allah's commands. And this is a very critical difference that sometimes believers lose this understanding of Allah's decree. Allah's decree is His, and we simply submit to it. But how we respond to Allah's decree is what Allah has guided us in His book. And Allah says, Alif Lam Mim. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people think they will be left alone after saying we believe without being put to the test? And I want to look at this ayah and the subsequent ones and ask and reflect on the test that we, those of us who are in the US, those of everybody who is not in Gaza, what is our test? Because it is very clear what is the test to those of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Allah continues, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. We tested those who went before them. Allah will certainly mark out which ones are truthful and which are lying. But Allah is saying in this ayah is that through Allah's decreed tests, Allah reveals to us, not to Himself, but to us, who are the ones who are the truthful ones and who are the ones who are lying. And you see this playing out over the last 40 plus days. A lie that is put forth, then a lie, that same lie is debunked. And another lie is put forth, and then that same lie gets debunked. And you might say, Subhanallah, Allah's decree is incredibly difficult on the people of Gaza. Indeed it is. Let us not understand that the decrees are easy on the people of Gaza. No, it is very difficult. But the reward for them, it is something absolutely amazing. And this Allah assures us of us. Allah assures us of it in multiple ayat. Allah continues in the sequence. أم حسب الذين يعملون السيئات أن يسبقونا ساء ما يحكمون. Do the evildoers think they can escape us? How ill they judge. So those who are doing this and those who are supporting this, if they think that Allah will let them be on a day that we will be standing and each one of us is going to say, Nafsi, Nafsi, Nafsi. Oh my soul, oh myself, oh what have I done? Every one of those that are committing these crimes and that are being supported in the commission of these crimes will be called to task by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah tells us something else. مَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ أَجَلَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. But as for those who strive for their meeting with Allah, Allah's appointed time is bound to come. He is the all-seeing, the all-knowing. This is Allah's way of comforting us and helping us understand that if you are of those who strive to demonstrate your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah commands us to demonstrate our beliefs, not to hold our beliefs in privacy and in the security of and in the safety of our homes, but to demonstrate that publicly. Not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows what is the most hidden thing in this universe, but to demonstrate to those who belie Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's revelations. To those who are evil, it is to them that we demonstrate our conviction and our faith. وَمَنْ جَاهَدَ فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ لِنَفْسِهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. Those who exert themselves do so for their own benefit. Allah does not need His creatures, lest the believers think that by exerting, we are the ones bringing the change. No, not at all. It is not we who bring change. It is we who present our hearts purified and committed and sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is the one who brings the change. That is our aqeedah, that is our belief, and that is our conviction. Because if we fail to understand it in the frame that I just presented, then we'll be no better than everybody else, who is infatuated with their power and their wealth and their might and their guns and their planes and their trains and their tanks. Right? That is the confusion the one who denies Allah reaches, that they embrace their own power. But their own power is a gift from Allah and is a test from Allah, and they forget that. Let us not be of those who are forgetful in that manner. Allah continues, and this is very good news. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَنُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَحْسَنَ الَّذِي كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Allah is saying, we shall certainly blot out the misdeeds of those who believe and do good deeds. That's us. That if we strive to speak the truth, to advocate for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, to commit to boycotting the products of companies that support the occupation of Gaza and of the West Bank, that we speak out to our congressmen and senators, because that's what we need to do, because these are the asbab, these are the means to change. For us in America, okay? If you are somewhere else, it may be a different set of changes. But these are what are available to us, and that we spend generously out of our wealth to support the restoration of services. We continue to call for a ceasefire that lasted less than a week, and they started bombing at 7 a.m. this morning in Gaza, right? And they will not stop. But we must not stop calling for this ceasefire, advocating with our congressmen and senators, raising funds to help rebuild Gaza when and if that happens. And we leave the results to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the status of the believer. She doesn't say that these are what we do. No. These are how we respond with our sincerity. But we never attribute success to our actions. That is a failed policy for humanity. We know and admit and assert that Allah is the one who brings the change. We simply present pure hearts, sincere hearts, and a sincere attempt. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives lots of guidance in the face of much confusion. Always Allah's words provide clarity, and this is a huge blessing for believers. When we see competing narratives, not from the Zionists, I'm talking about competing narratives even amongst us as Muslims. Should we do this? Should we not do this? Is this good? Is this not good? You might be sitting there and thinking all of these things that our brother is saying in his khutbah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, it is possible. But what is not out of the realm of guiding us is Allah's words, right? So we always reflect and look to Allah's words to see how it is that the words of everybody else balances against the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches Musa alayhi salam in the Quran how to answer Fir'aun. And it is very instructive, and I'd like to share that. How did Musa alayhi salam, who comes with no army, who comes with no guns, no tanks, no planes, right? And tells Musa, Ya Musa, let the children of Israel go. Let them go. Stop your abuse and your enslavement of the children of Israel. This is exactly what most of us are saying. To whom? To the Zionists. Right? That the whole world is saying that to them, and they do not listen. So here's a sequence in Surah Al-Shu'ara in which Allah documents for us for eternity how Musa alayhi salam interacted with Fir'aun. After Musa alayhi salam tells him that you should let the children of Israel go, how does Fir'aun respond? He says, قال ألم نربك فينا وليدا ولبثت فينا من عمرك سنين وفعلت فعلتك التي فعلت وأنت من الكافرين قال فعلتها إذا وأنا من الضالين ففررت منكم لما خفتكم ووهب لي ربي حكما وجعلني من المرسلين وتلك نعمة تمنها علي أن عبدت بني إسرائيل. Musa alayhi salam is taught by Fir'aun to overturn and turn on its head the argument that Fir'aun is making. So what is this conversation for those of us who need to think of it in the English? Fir'aun said, did we not rear you among us as a child, and did you not stay with us for years of your life? When Musa is telling Fir'aun, let them go for the fact that you've enslaved them, Fir'aun responds and says, you are telling me this? I raised you. He is putting on him and reminding him of the favors that he did him. I raised you, and I fed you, and I clothed you, and I made you a prince of Egypt. And you stayed with us enjoying these luxuries for years. Look at this argument that Fir'aun makes to Musa. And then he charges him, Fir'aun charges Musa, and he says, and you committed that deed of yours being an ungrateful person. It's the deed of when Musa was trying to stop one of the slave drivers of Fir'aun from hitting one of the children of Banu Israel. Musa, being the strong prophet that he was, pushed this man, and the man fell, hit his head, and died. Right? That's the crime that Fir'aun is charging Musa alayhi salam with. So look at Musa's answer. Musa does not argue that. Right? Musa does not say, but it was involuntary manslaughter. He doesn't argue that. Right? He argues a far bigger, a far more important point. He says, I did that then when I was unguided. I did that. Yes, you're right, Musa. You're right, Fir'aun, I did that. When I did not have guidance. So I fled from you as I was afraid of you. I was afraid of your injustice. That is what Musa is telling him. I was afraid of your injustice. You know, I simply tried to stop that man. But because of your injustice, I fled. Then my Lord gave me judgment and made me one of the messengers. Right? My Lord gave me judgment and made me one of the messengers. That is, he gave me insight and understanding of how to deal with these matters. And then he turns the argument back on him. And he says to him, that is the favor that you raised me in your household? You are presenting that back to me as a response to the fact that I'm charging you with your crime of enslaving and killing and destroying the children of Israel. Right? So the argument that we must be courageous to present, okay, is to anybody that will listen, to your neighbors, to your colleagues, we must have that courage. We must have that courage. This is a matter of courage, and nothing less than a matter of courage. If we do not have that courage, then the ayat I read to you, Allah will ask me, did you have the courage, Iftikhar, to use whatever means you have at your disposal to speak about the truth of this matter? Or did you stay comfortably in your house and say, well, I can't do anything? No, you can do something. If you can convince your neighbor, do it. If you can convince your boss or your colleague or the person who works for you, do it. If you can talk about this in your position within society and change a person's mind, Allah will change his mind. You have to do the job of speaking truth. Then do it. And don't sit back and say, well, it won't make a difference. Allah will make the difference. You must do your part, which is simply to try. So we must be cognizant that in this conversation amongst ourselves, that we don't fall trapped to misunderstanding Allah's methods, Allah's approach, and that we don't get confused by lies and deceptions. So specific things to keep in mind. You're citizens of this country, you're residents of this country, speak out as its citizens and its residents. Your interests, if you feel sad for what is happening, if you feel devastated for what is happening to the people of Gaza and to the people of 10 other countries I could mention who are Muslims, then understand that interest that you have, that sadness that you feel, those are your values. So represent your values. Your values are the values that Allah has guided you with. You're part of a system in America. Understand how it works and engage in it. If you don't agree with the way the system works, many of us don't agree with the way the politics works, then work to change it. Change in the United States, if you have read any part of US history for the last 250 plus years, change in the United States does happen, but it doesn't happen from the center. It doesn't happen from Washington. It happens from the peripheries. It happens from mass movements. It happens from advocacy of people. The civil rights movement, the labor movement, the suffrage movement, read about this in American history. It did not happen because congressmen and senators got together and said, oh, we're doing something wrong, let's change it. It doesn't happen that way. It happens because people come together, they organize, and they push for change with the powers that be. And when the powers that be, your congressman and your senator, find that there is overwhelming push against them and towards a certain change, they have no choice but to change. That's how change occurs in this country. So let us wake up and understand that they are scared of being exposed. Who are scared of being exposed? Zionists, people who lie, and those who support them. They're scared of being exposed. What the behavior of the courageous people of Gaza has shown on social media, on these little things that every one of us carries in the privacy of our homes, we see the violence that this country puts on innocent men, women, and children. Those are the things that are turning hearts and minds of the average person in this country, like no other time before. Because, like no other time before, these images in the past were controlled by big media. They're no longer being controlled. They cannot be controlled. No matter how much that country tries to cut off power so that these things cannot be projected. So recognize that the children of Gaza, the men of Gaza, the brave men of Gaza, the brave women of Gaza are asking you and I to speak on their behalf. They're not telling us to go fight for them. They're simply telling us, use your means to speak about this and to educate and to advocate. So let us do that so that we can stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tell him in response to his questioning, what did you do? We say to him, Ya Allah, we were scared, we were afraid, but we did this and we did this and we did this. And through that process, Allah will reveal to you your fears and how unnecessary they are. They really are unnecessary. Because if you are afraid of the creator of the worlds, none of the creation of the world will make you afraid. And if you are not afraid of the creator of the world, every creation of this world will make you afraid. May Allah guide us to be afraid and fearful of the Lord of the world and not of the creation of the Lord of the world. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Allah says in Surah Al-Isra, وَقُلْ رَبِّي ادْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. Say, my Lord, make me go in truthfully and come out truthfully and grant me supporting authority from you. This is a dua that Allah is teaching us to engage, right? To engage with people, with powers, with entities, and to engage with them and not get confused in the process, right? When you argue with a person, the people who are liars, they will lie and lie and lie and argue and argue and argue. And you can see those arguments if you watch Hussam Zumlat, if you watch Mustafa Barghouti, if you watch many people, right? And these are two Palestinians I'm mentioning, but there are many others who are arguing on media, and those who represent lies, you know, it keeps breaking down, right? Because when you go into this argumentation, this is the dua you make. رَبِّ ادْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. My Lord, make me go in truthfully. You're doing this to establish truth, not for your own sake, not for your own interest, not for your own gains. And come out truthfully, that we go into an engagement and don't get confused because somebody argued in a malicious way what is the untruth. And grant me supporting authority from you. This is the constant refrain of the believer. The believer doesn't ascribe success or failure to himself. He ascribes success to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he asks Allah for forgiveness for his failures. But success and failure are both of Allah's decree and for us to manage. When we are successful in a goal, we are humble. And when we are failing in a goal that we want to achieve, then we turn to Allah, seeking His forgiveness and seeking His guidance. So may Allah give us that tawfiq, and to recognize in the very next ayah in this sequence, Allah says, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. And say, the truth has come and falsehood has passed away. Falsehood is bound to pass away. As you can see, you know, little bits and pieces that you can see unfold in front of our eyes. Somebody lies and lies and lies, and then some argument is made truthfully, emphatically, with courage, with conviction, and the argument falls apart. The argument falls apart. We need to believe this. We need to believe what Allah has guided us with. And as I said a little bit earlier, this is a matter of courage. We must have courage. For if you are believers, if we are believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is it that we are afraid of? What is it that we are afraid of? We should not be afraid. We should rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask for His guidance, and speak and respond to Allah's decrees, and act and respond to Allah's decrees with Allah's commands. And Allah's commands are clear in the Quran. May Allah give us that tawfiq to fully understand His commands and to respond appropriately to Allah's decrees. Never be dissatisfied with Allah's decrees. Every child, every man, every woman, every elderly person that Allah has decreed to leave Gaza, they have things that are unimaginable to us. And they will, on the Day of Judgment, will be sitting on thrones of green velvet and green silk. And we will be looking at them saying, Ya Rayt, I wish I was there. That's what they have received. Trust your hearts when you read the Quran to understand what they have already received. All we have to do is figure out, do we want those seats of green? And what is it that we need to do on behalf of them? Because working on behalf of them is actually working on behalf of you and I. It is in our interest to represent the values we hold from the Quran. It is in our interest to represent them appropriately. May Allah give us all that tawfiq. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقم الصلاة